A giant African rock python, a muscular coil of patterned death, had wrapped itself around a skinny male lion. On the sun-baked dirt road that cut through the savannah, the scene was raw, brutal, and final. The lion, once a king, was now just a frail body being slowly extinguished. His ribs jutted out starkly beneath his hide, a harsh testament to a long decline. His once glorious mane had thinned into a patchy, lifeless mess. He lay completely still, life reduced to the shallowest of breaths. His eyes were glazed, not just with exhaustion, but with something deeper. Resignation. He wasn't fighting anymore. He had accepted his fate as the python's crushing grip continued its grim work. Further down the road, two figures stood, frozen, their ranger uniforms sharply contrasting against the pale grass. For a moment, they were only witnesses to nature's harsh decree. But then, something passed silently between them. A decision, and they moved. Gripping the long wooden poles in their hands, they broke the stillness, boots kicking up dry, dust as they ran, charging toward the unfolding tragedy. To understand the weight of that decision, we have to go back just a few minutes, to a moment when the day still felt calm, and the savannah seemed to be holding its breath. Earlier that day, the patrol had been routine for Rangers Caleb and Marcus. The open-top Jeep hummed steadily, a familiar sound against the vast silence of the dry savannah, where thorny silhouettes of acacia trees broke up the horizon. They were partners, friends, both barely 30, and both carried a deep respect for the wilderness they were sworn to protect. Marcus was scanning the horizon when he suddenly motioned for Caleb to slow down. "Movement up ahead," he said quietly. On the road, some distance ahead, a lump sat motionless, unidentifiable at first. But as they drove closer, the shape began to resolve, and what they saw made their blood run cold. Caleb stopped the Jeep. Both men raised their binoculars, and the image that snapped into focus stole the breath from their lungs. A massive African rock python had wrapped itself around the emaciated frame of a male lion. They could see every detail: the protruding bones, the dull, lifeless coat, the way the lion wasn't even fighting. They had seen lions hunt, fight, even die. But this was different. An apex predator, brought so low, reduced to helpless prey. They jumped from the Jeep, grabbing two long, heavy wooden poles from the back. Tools meant more for brushing away thorny branches than for anything like this. As they approached the grim scene, reality hit them hard, and a tense argument sparked. "We can't," Caleb said, voice heavy with conflict. "Look at him, Marcus. He's old, starving. The python just got to him first. This is nature's way. It's brutal, but it's the law out here. We're just supposed to watch." Marcus didn't take his eyes off the lion. No creature deserves to suffer. "Like this. We're here. We have a chance to stop it. That's what we do, isn't it? We protect." "We protect the ecosystem," Caleb shot back. "We don't interfere with the natural order. This is part of it." The argument hung in the air, hot, dry, and painfully still, a clash of duty and compassion. Were they guardians of life, or just silent observers of a system that didn't leave room for mercy? The question felt impossible. Then, a faint, broken sound broke the silence, a weak groan from the lion, a sound of pure agony, proof he was still alive, still suffering. That single desperate sound cut through everything: hesitation, debate, duty. It forced their hands. Without another word, they moved, bound together by an unspoken purpose. The lion's cry had made the choice for them. They stepped forward, measured and steady. "Go for the coils," Marcus said tightly. "Try to create space. I'll watch its head." They reached the gruesome scene and got to work, using the long wooden poles to prod and push at the python's thick, muscular coils, trying to find some leverage, trying to free the lion. The reptile, sensing the interference, reacted instantly. Its massive body, which had been entirely focused on the act of constriction, suddenly shifted its awareness to a new threat. With a speed that defied its size, the python's head whipped around and struck out at Marcus. He jumped back, the fangs missing his leg by just inches, and stumbled in the dust. The rescue had just turned into a fight for their own safety. Seeing his partner nearly bitten, Caleb reacted on instinct. This time he didn't try to pry the coils loose. He swung the pole to strike. A hard, deliberate blow aimed straight at the snake's body. The impact landed with a solid thud, not to injure, but to distract. The python's head swiveled toward him, its forked tongue flicking the air, tasting the disturbance, and that gave Marcus the opening he needed. He drove the end of his pole into a gap between the snake's coil and the lion's ribcage, pushing with everything he had. They fell into a desperate rhythm. Caleb kept the python's focus, feinting, jabbing, taunting, anything to keep that dangerous head occupied. Meanwhile, Marcus worked with precision and urgency, trying to wedge space between the thick coils and the lion's fragile body. It was a grueling struggle, a battle of human will against raw, primal force. Sweat streamed down their faces, stinging their eyes. The African sun burned overhead without mercy. The only sounds were their own heavy breathing, the dry rasp of the python's scales grinding against the dirt, and the labored, weakening breaths of the lion beneath. Minute after minute passed. It felt hopeless at times. The snake's grip was overwhelming, a knotted wall of muscle that refused to yield, but they didn't stop. They couldn't. Every second deepened their resolve, and then, finally, something shifted. With one last, coordinated heave, they felt it. A slight give. The coils loosened. At first it was subtle, just the tiniest release of pressure, but it was enough. The python, its focus broken and its energy drained from fending off two determined humans, seemed to come to a decision. Predation no longer mattered. Survival did. Muscle by muscle, the snake began to uncoil. Slowly, steadily, it let go, revealing more and more of the lion's frail, battered body. Then, in one last fluid, eerie motion, the huge reptile slid away. It slithered off into the tall, pale grass at the side of the road, vanishing as if it had never been there at all. For a moment, Caleb and Marcus just stood there, leaning on their poles, gasping for breath. Their chests heaved. A wave of adrenaline-fueled relief washed over them. They had done it. They had stared down a giant python and won. They had saved the lion. Slowly, cautiously, they stepped forward, approaching the animal. They had fought so hard to free. They knelt down in the dust beside it. And that's when the truth hit them. Hard. Crushingly hard. Now that the constricting coils were gone, they could finally see the lion clearly, and what they saw was devastating. It wasn't just old. It wasn't just thin. A deep, jagged wound festered on its flank, swollen, dark, angry with infection, an injury it had likely been carrying for days, and in that moment, they understood. The python hadn't hunted a mighty king. It had found a dying one. It had simply been an opportunist, choosing a creature that was already walking the slow, painful path toward death. The skinny male lion stirred, summoning a tremendous effort that seemed to drain every last ounce of strength from his fragile body. He lifted his head. His cloudy eyes found the two men kneeling beside him, and for a moment, something flickered in their depths. Something unreadable. He held their gaze for a long second, a silent acknowledgement. Then, with a final shallow exhale, barely more than a whisper of air, his head sank back into the dust. The light in his eyes faded. Gone. And the stillness that followed was absolute. They had rescued him from the python, but they couldn't save him from his own mortality. The victory felt profoundly hollow. The two rangers remained there, kneeling in the dirt, unmoving. The silence of the savannah stretched around them in every direction. The harsh sun beat down on the lifeless form of the skinny male lion, a creature that had once been the symbol of raw strength, now reduced to a solemn testament to the unforgiving cycle of nature. Finally, Marcus spoke. His voice was quiet, raspy. Maybe we just freed it to die on its own terms. Caleb looked from the still body of the lion to the vast, indifferent horizon. He thought about their earlier debate, about the fight, about that last, fleeting moment of connection with the dying animal. Or maybe, he said slowly, we had to witness this. We had to be reminded that even kings must eventually bow to nature. He paused, then turned to look at his friend. But our choice wasn't about the outcome. It was about who we are. We couldn't just stand by and watch the suffering. We couldn't be the kind of men who do nothing. They knew they couldn't leave him there. It felt wrong. In a final silent act of respect, they worked together, using their hands and the ends of their poles to dig a shallow grave in the soft earth beside the road. They gently moved the skinny, male lion into it, a final gesture of dignity for a fallen king. As they climbed back into the jeep and drove on, the mood between them was heavy. But there was also a quiet understanding. They hadn't changed the end of the lion's story, but by choosing to intervene, by choosing compassion in the face of such a harsh, indifferent reality, they had affirmed something vital within themselves. The true victory wasn't in saving a life that was already slipping away. It was in refusing to let their own humanity be diminished by the wilderness they served.